And welcome to some new folks popping in here. A couple other pieces, just housekeeping. This is an info session, which is not something we do often. So it's an exciting kind of different approach where we have an opportunity to partner as teammates with another organization doing work that we all have shared values around. So as we go, typically these kind of RCC calls are community spaces where there's a lot of Q&A, a lot of discussion, and we will hold time for that at the end of the call. So feel free to chat your questions as they come up, either in the chat box or directly to me. I'll be collecting those. And I also encourage us to continue conversations off the side. So if another question comes up 2 hours from now or a couple days from now, shoot them to me. I'm collecting those. I'll put a document in the chat where I'm kind of collecting other feedback and ideas from conversations I'm having off the side. So I want to make sure that you understand this is part of a bigger conversation and that you're involved and your input is really valuable. But I'm excited to welcome Bob Rieg to this call, who's going to be kind of giving a full presentation about the idea, the concept, and then welcoming our questions afterwards. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you so much. Hear me all right? Awesome. And also joining me today from our team is Maggie Gunther Osborne with MGO Partners, and she's one of our advisors in our AmeriCorps planning grant and wants to be as helpful as she can. So I asked her to join us for listening and sharing her insights.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Anyway, I'm going to get rocking and rolling here. Again, my name's Bob Rieg. I'm the CEO of Peace Through Action USA, and it's a pleasure to be with you to introduce you to Peace Through Action AmeriCorps, our future National Service Corps for Peace. And our thanks to the Retreat Center collaboration for jumping on this opportunity with us and creating this space to present an opportunity to retreat centers and see where we want to take it. A little bit on the origin story of how we got here. So I'm longtime friends with Suzanne Beejan at ARC in Minnesota. And when I started Peace Through Action 6-7 years ago now, she was one of the champions of this idea I had about an organization focused on peace in the U.S. and mobilizing people to be more peaceful. There are a lot of peaceful practices, not as many people practicing them. So she got behind that idea generally, and it's been a real friend of ours. And at one point we were talking about, I wonder what Peace Through Action could do to support retreatants somehow. And that kind of sat there on the side. And then this AmeriCorps opportunity came forward, a planning grant, which kind of gave us an opportunity to focus our energy around something specific. And in my curiosity and knowing there's an association for everybody, I said, I wonder what kind of association is there for retreat centers. Lo and behold, retreat center collaboration. And then I found Ben. Ben's an AmeriCorps alum. In case you don't know that, thank you for your civilian service to our country at an earlier part in your life. And from Ben's description to me, I don't think I'm sharing out of turn. It was an important moment in his choosing what kind of career path he wanted to be on, and that you get to benefit from Ben in your daily lives. Should give you a sense of the possibility that AmeriCorps has for creating and cultivating future leaders as well. So with that little bit of an origin story, I'm going to move forward here. So a little bit about Peace Through Action. So we're a national scope civic and social capital building organization, and our purpose is to activate and equip Americans to implement practical, peaceful solutions to aggression and violence in their communities and our country. And let me find my little arrow. There we go. So quickly, our theory of change wraps up into a slogan: be peace, choose peace, create peace. And the extended version, well, I got a really long extended version in the form of an organization plan and a case statement, but the PowerPoint slide version of it is that we offer resources in forms of people and knowledge, and bring that together to activate people to be peaceful through peaceful messaging, through uplifting people who are role models in peace building in the United States, and encouraging prayer and meditation for those who use those practices to create some inner peace. And then those activated people, we then seek to equip them to be peaceful or to apply peaceful practices in the domains of social and emotional development, aggression and violence interruption, and harm repair. And that combination then of activated and equipped people leads to peaceful places, because there'll be peaceful people in those peaceful places. And so we can measure peacefulness in communities by levels of increased engagement civically and socially, as well as decreases in the negative things such as aggression and violence. So again, our theory is be peace, choose peace, create peace. And AmeriCorps, just to make sure we all know who that is, that's the federal agency for national service and volunteerism. And AmeriCorps provides opportunities for Americans to serve their country domestically, address the nation's most pressing challenges, improve lives and communities, and strengthen civic engagement. And so one of the most pressing challenges affecting us today is social discord. We're a nation with too many hurting people, and there's all sorts of evidence of that for those who just don't feel that in their hearts. But I'm guessing many on this call today just feel that, in our heart space and our mind space, that we're a socially unwell country in many regards. So that's the pressing challenge that Peace Through Action seeks to address, and how we want to apply AmeriCorps to do that. So again, all sorts of data points to document the social discord. I won't elaborate, but no, there's data points for each of these bullet points. And so our solution that Peace Through Action's pursuing is behavior change. And we believe that communities experiencing discontentment and discord can be transformed into equitable and harmonious places when their people acquire new knowledge, assume fresh attitudes, and adopt positive behaviors. And that's all possible through individual, group, and collective learning, intention, and action. And our supposition is, who better than AmeriCorps members to be part of that and to be the teachers, leaders, and agents of the human enrichment that socially distressed communities urgently need. So with that in mind, we saw an opportunity to engage with AmeriCorps in the form of a planning grant opportunity that was announced in 2022, I guess, and decided upon in 2023. And so in that process of submitting an application, being awarded a planning grant, we had to say some things about this program we wanted to build. And so these next couple of slides identify some of the conditions or expectations of the program as we proposed it and were awarded funds to build. So the formal purpose statement thus far is to implement civic engagement, social cohesion, and peace-building interventions in socially stressed communities, which seek to bridge divides between, unite, and increase peace among their people and in their places. And our intention is that our initial work will be building a go-to program for communities seeking to access AmeriCorps to improve their social cohesion and increase their peace. There isn't right now a strong emphasis on peace building at all in AmeriCorps. That's definitely not a word they use. Social cohesion is a focus area of the agency. It's not in the statute, so there's some limitations on how forthright AmeriCorps can be in it, but there really aren't therefore a whole hub of AmeriCorps sponsor organizations working in this domain. So we're hoping Peace Through Action AmeriCorps will be that, and will be a stimulus for other organizations to follow our great example. And then the vision of our doing this and then bringing others on board too is that as a nation, we'll have an opportunity for Americans to increase peace through national service continually and in perpetuity. So just like programs that were started in the 1990s when AmeriCorps state and national was approved by Congress that are still existing today, think of City Year, Teach for America, various conservation corps. I can go on the list of old standbys in national service. They are still present today. They've been able to build an ecosystem that allows people to continually and perpetually serve our country in those focus areas. And that's our hope ultimately for social cohesion and peace building. So back a moment to give you some definitions of terms. I'm not going to go through every one of these slides. You will get the slide deck and a recording, but a few to make sure we have some common understanding. So an AmeriCorps member, AmeriCorps requires us as planning grantees and operating grantees to call them members because they do get paid typically. So they're not volunteers. They're not employees. They're not independent contractors. They're AmeriCorps members. They have a distinct place in the statute, federal statute, but they are an individual who engages in community service through a national service position that's approved by the agency. Full-time members must receive a living allowance. Some part-time members may receive an allowance, and typically they all have access to some benefits or others. Those again vary based on the amount of time they're committing. But they all, at the conclusion of their service, have access to a Siegel America or Education Award, which they can use to pay off qualified student loan debt or to apply toward their future education. And national service is basically civilian participation for a fixed term and sometimes with compensation in any non-governmental capacity. I think the distinction there between employment and service would be this fixed term component. That's definitely a mindset of these are folks who want to give for a specific period of time to a cause in their community. They're not committing to that organization or that cause for eternity, but it's the fixed term piece. And also the living allowance is less generous than most employment is. And then just so I won't go through this whole slide, but the program that we fall under with AmeriCorps, the agency, is the AmeriCorps state and national program. Some behavior words, some psychology words. I'd say behavior, the way which we respond to a stimulus or situation. Aggression is behavior that causes harm to another person. Violence is intentional use of force or power that leads to those harms. And some of the asset building words that we're striving toward. Civic engagement, constellation of activities individuals engage in to make difference in their communities, and all these kind of sub areas there on the bullets. And some keywords that associate with civic engagement are on this slide: voting, formal volunteering, exchanging favors with neighbors, attending public meetings, all being examples. And then civic capital or activity, this is civic bridging, sorry. So that's a word that's coming into favor, and it's definitely a feature of AmeriCorps at this time. These are activities that bring diverse communities together to strengthen differences across lines of difference, forge common purpose, and solve community problems and diminish polarization. And civic capital, formal and informal networks and relationships and capacities that communities use to make decisions collaboratively and solve problems. Social cohesion, another word that's been around a long time, but catching favor in public policy and nonprofit discourse. Civic discourse is the extent to which communities come together for harmonious relationships, work together, and feel obligated to act toward common purpose. Some of the keywords that you can associate with that are connectedness, belonging, and trust. And then that yields some social capital, features of social organizations such as networks, norms, and social trust that facilitate coordination and cooperation for mutual benefit. The reason I put these in here is these are the key concepts that Peace Through Action AmeriCorps is anchoring around, and just feel that's important for you to know that, and also have some definitions to operate with. And then the controversial definition of, well, what's peace, right? We probably all have our definition. Shockingly, I found out the United Nations does not. So, okay, I'm not using their lack of a definition. I don't really like the dictionary definitions, or often absence of bad things definitions. So this is the one Peace Through Action constructed for ourselves, and doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be yours, but it's how we imagine peace to be. It's the condition that's generated when harmony, justice, and order flourish together. And the last term is a technical term, basically our programs and services, but AmeriCorps calls them interventions. And so there'll be periods in our slide where I might be talking about interventions, and I'm talking basically the activities that AmeriCorps members would pursue. So some characteristics of the program that we're building. This again are characteristics we said we would go forward with when we submitted a planning grant. We're pursuing a grant that's multi-state and territory, meaning that the AmeriCorps members we receive will be able to place across the country, which is a real advantage for an organization like a retreat center that might want to benefit from one AmeriCorps member. It doesn't need 20 AmeriCorps members, and therefore if you wanted 20, you would go in and apply to your state service commission and get your 20 members just to serve in your state. But since we're trying to serve organizations that might not have capacity or want that capacity for a volume of AmeriCorps members, an approach like we're taking allows us to satisfy organizations with a whole range of capacity and levels of interest in participating in AmeriCorps. And consequently, by being multi-state and territory, we project we'll also be placing members in a mix of rural, suburban, and urban geographic communities, and also with organizations that are serving a mix of underrepresented and underserved population communities. Right, if we're challenged to with more interest than members we receive, we will need to make some priority decision making on who would get them over others, since these are some of the factors where social discord is prevalent or severe. I mean, I think we can assume we're discordant everywhere, but some places more than others, or some communities experiencing discord more than others. So that's a factor. If the organization that we're partnering with really is going to attend to people who have been historically underrepresented and underserved. And then this is definitely one that I think many organizations aligning with us will fall into. They're either small or they're new to AmeriCorps. We're creating space and a focus area for the agency that many organizations, including some probably retreat centers, just typically wouldn't have seen AmeriCorps as a place to go to. They don't have, like I said, social cohesion or violence prevention or peace promotion. It's not in the statute. And so anything AmeriCorps is doing in this space is kind of on the fringes, and we're trying to walk in on the fringe and open it up to be in the main. So we're the model we're pursuing is what's called an intermediary model. So in Peace Through Action, we don't have our own chapters or networks or affiliates. So what we're proposing, or have proposed, and how we're structuring ourselves is we're going to be a central entity to get AmeriCorps members to all sorts of groups, not just our own internal network. And that can happen in the way it would happen with a retreat center, where we'd be placing an AmeriCorps member within an existing organization. There may be some instances where an organization wants larger group of AmeriCorps members or a team of members and would see us as a vehicle to accessing them. And then we're even open to being supportive of informal groups of individual citizens or grassroots groups that are unincorporated that want something to be happening in their community. They don't have a formal structure in which to do that, and say, well, Peace Through Action will provide you that formal structure, and we'll call it a community peace project, and it'll be our legally incorporate, fall under our corporate status project, but would allow the community to proceed and then build its own structure accordingly. So all sorts of organizations might find home in our portfolio. You'll see I added retreat centers. So gives you a flavor of the many places that could benefit from an AmeriCorps member through us. And then in terms of the member profile, AmeriCorps members, we kind of typically, if you're familiar at all with AmeriCorps, well, if you're low familiar with AmeriCorps, you think it's domestic Peace Corps. And if you think it's domestic Peace Corps, then you know, well, Peace Corps members go overseas for full-time for 2 years. You know, a lot of people think AmeriCorps is similar. It is, but first of all, it's 1 year, not 2. And members can serve either full-time terms or part-time terms. Probably when you think of them in the United States, think of full-timers. But there are lots of freedoms below that. And so our program is going to have part-time options, partly in response to what organizations may need, but also in response to welcoming more people who want to serve that might find full-time service not possible for them due to income concerns, due to family care responsibilities, due to being at a stage in life where they don't want to put all their energy on just one thing. Typically a member's term is 1 year, something about 11.5 months. Sometimes they're shorter, but we'll go as far as we can to the 12, and they may renew up to 3 terms. So if the AmeriCorps member is satisfied and wants to stay where they're at in the organization, wants to continue them, then that becomes possible. But regardless of whether the member leaves or not, there's also an opportunity for sites to, you know, kind of vision they're going to have someone for at least the length of our grant, which is a 3-year period. But also like, this didn't really work for me. At the end of the first year, wow, we're out. This didn't work. Or gosh, we having such great success. Can we add more members? So all sorts of freedoms, both in terms of the members' time commitment as well as the organization's commitment to participation in the program. So anyone in America who the legal qualifications for AmeriCorps State National are at least a high school graduate, a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or legal permanent resident, and not having been convicted of murder or a sex offense. Beyond that, it's up to the sites, up to programs to set their qualifications. And so that for us, that's going to be position by position. So it's like, no, we really need an MSW. It's going to take a long time to get one, but you could be that specific, or we just want anyone who cares. We'll help them be most successful. So really anyone, you know, writ broad other than those federal qualifications, exclusions is in our possibility range. But within that, we think there might be some draw to our program of people with some specific life experiences or backgrounds that might find our program attractive, such as people who studied peace. And I'm hearing a lot from people like, oh yeah, I'm hearing a lot from the academics. Yes, we prepare them in these international peace and security programs, and then they don't have jobs to go to. Wow, wouldn't those be some great people to put in some, you know, in some functioning, operating activity in the United States while they pursue their international dream? That's one example. So members do different kind of things. Most AmeriCorps members will be engaged in direct service. That's activities that reach a population with some sort of activity or intervention. In our case, there'll be civic engagement and social cohesion interventions. AmeriCorps really wants members on each of the programs to kind of be channeling a majority of their attention toward a single intervention. So you'll see in a future slide, we are anticipating the many flowers blooming approach, but within that we need to anchor members' time around something concentrated that most of them will be doing at least part of their term toward, and that allows us to satisfy AmeriCorps' expectations, both programmatically as well as in terms of how they expect us to measure performance. That being said, again, service sites, you all as retreat centers, if you choose to join us, would be a service site, may implement additional interventions. So AmeriCorps state and national members can also engage in capacity building. That's some activities that increase scale, reach, efficiency, or effectiveness of an organization. And so the kind of activities that associate with capacity building are things like engaging volunteers or building community coalitions, organizing communities, as well as some things that really their capacity not highly encouraged in state and national things like fundraising and marketing also would be examples of capacity building. And then it is an anchor point of the AmeriCorps program that AmeriCorps members have this opportunity to learn and grow while they're serving. And so some hours that are of their term are required to be reserved for learning and development. So the theory that we're building to guide our program future is that a combination of introducing more Americans to universal peaceful skills like compassion and bias reduction and upstander intervention. Those are restorative practices. Those are all skills that have widespread applicability regardless of setting and regardless of situation. And then those same or other community members having opportunity to engage in dialogue with people in their community on whatever issues the community wants to talk about. Does not have to be about the presidential election or a political party or the red-blue divide. It might be groups who want, maybe the topic people want to focus on are understanding different religious practices. Maybe it's a very localized issue such as, you know, what side of the road should the sidewalk be put on? I mean, it can be very, very customized to what the community wants to talk about. So that's the second piece, and then some action taking opportunity. Our experience at Peace Direct, a lot of people have a brief moment of excitement. Maybe they heard a good sermon, or they had an insight from a meditation, or they went to a protest and were all fired up, and then, yeah, what happened next? So we want to kind of create some moments to fill that space and give people their next step by engaging them in some action planning. All of those, so that combination of those first three boxes are the inputs and activities, and that leads to outcomes. Knowledge, attitude, skills, and behavior outcomes are all areas that we'll expect to see improvement in human beings, and then as a result, the communities over time will increase their social cohesion. So that's the theory, and then from that we identify right now 4 objectives of our program. One is to bridge ideological and cultural divides by engaging people in civic dialogue. The second is to equip people with practical peaceful behavior skills that can apply in their interpersonal actions. The third is to leverage volunteers for social cohesion and peace-building activities. And the fourth is to prepare AmeriCorps members for effective national service and citizenship and for post-service peace-building positions. So you'll see that 2 of those bullets have to deal with the direct service, bridging the dialogues and the behavior skills. The third has to do with the capacity building purpose of AmeriCorps around leveraging volunteers. And the fourth bullet has to deal with the learning and development purpose about preparing people while they're serving to serve effectively and also cultivate their own commitment to a lifelong positive citizenship. And really, what we'd love to have happen is that people are going to be so fired up during their service that they're going to want jobs afterwards, and that we're going to create this market pressure on society to create work opportunities for people who want to build peace in the United States. So the program mix looks like this. Again, if my dream would be, oh, let's just get AmeriCorps members and y'all do something positive with them. That's really not the responsible way to use money. It's definitely not the responsible way to use public dollars, and it wouldn't be something AmeriCorps would find compelling. So we do have to anchor our members around some things over anything. So what we've chosen, and they call that the thing that the members are supposed to do, not the most of individually, but corporately, our AmeriCorps body needs to do this at some majority of their time in aggregate, needs to be on one thing called, and they call that the primary intervention. And that's the set of activities that are going to be the activities that we measure and that we report. And so that's in that red box here. We've landed on civic dialogue as the primary intervention type. And the reason we've done that is we think they're very useful in community settings. They bring people together who may have never had a conversation with someone different from them, or have been fighting about something for a long time and want to like move beyond quarreling and move into some understanding and hopefully some solution setting together. It's also a strategic priority of AmeriCorps in the notice that we are applying for in terms of the operating grant. So yeah, let's be honest. So you see the list of things they want you to put in your grant. Okay, we got it. So that's why we chose dialogue, but I'd like to defend it more than the strategy. It really is an appropriate form of peace building. People get together with each other and figure it out. With that being said, we are going to allow multiple dialogue methods. So we're not forcing everyone in our grant to use one. The first three that are on this list are the methods that Peace Through Action will make sure our members are trained and equipped to deliver in their communities. One of those is the Essential Partners method. They've been around for a long time and is a highly regarded dialogue method. The second is the Courage and Renewal approach, which comes from the Center for Courage and Renewal. You may be familiar with that one. I'm going to guess some retreat centers probably rely on the Center for Courage and Renewal and the Circle of Trust approach, and some of the other activities that are born out of that center, formed by Parker Palmer, who, again, I'm thinking the retreat community knows who I'm talking about. So we really love that. It's a little more, Essential Partners is very like brass tacks dialogue, where the Courage and Renewal approach allows for a little more heart space and your one's ethics to come in a more deeper way than you might if you're just organizing your dialogue around, let's just talk about a topic. And then we also will be helping our members learn The Heart of Democracy, Healing the Heart of Democracy, the book and the discussion guide that the Center for Courage and Renewal produced. So those are all that we'll prepare members to do, and they'll be the community that receives them that can choose one or more of those three. But if you already have a dialogue method you love, oh, our retreat center's been doing X method since the 1960s, or our community that we sit in has adopted one that everyone's using to like build spirit and commonality around a method, fine. We're not asking anyone to give up what they currently do, but we also think a number of organizations won't have chosen one at all. And if they're in that situation, then we want to help them by saying, well, we've already gone through the list of a dozen or more and picked three, choose one of our three. And then, so that's the white box. The last primary, it's not really going to fall in our primary intervention, but it's a must-have to happen thing, is AmeriCorps members have to engage in National Days of Service. And that's 9/11 Day, which we just observed, and Martin Luther King Day is the second federally designated National Day of Service. So AmeriCorps members must participate in them either by organizing events or attending events. During their term, they'll be doing that in their communities and hopefully with their host sites. Okay, so that's the red. The blue is all the extra fun things that an AmeriCorps member could do under our program, and that's going to be dependent on you all's selection of them and how much time the member's giving to their term, and most importantly what the community wants. But some of those on the list here, the first four and the second box are activities that Peace Through Action itself is building for our AmeriCorps members and others to use. One's an action planning activity, again, to give people some formalized moment to sit down with somebody else who's got a little bit ahead of them to do a planned session, to plan their future action. What's their peace through action plan? How are they going to practice peace in where they have some locus of control? Is it in their home? Is it in their workplace? Is it their children's school? Is it their place of prayer or worship? Is it their neighborhood? And then, okay, what can I really do? And what I most care about? How do I act on that? We also have a youth development program that we're demonstrating at this time that will be available. And then these two others are some trainings, like our less brief rapid intervention, rapid introduction to compassion. We don't expect people to go through an hour of a compassion training and be able to live the whole Karen Armstrong 12 steps immediately. But, oh, I didn't know there was some theory about how one becomes compassionate and what we can actually learn it and practice and do it. It's not just, not just born with it. So those kind of trainings. We do see some communities are telling us that they have some interest in mobilizing volunteers around de-escalation or early warning systems to spot problematic behavior that's about to burst before it does. Some other communities participate. And that's why I say we're not very organized. You have a bunch of people run around who care about peace, but we don't actually do that together. Okay, let's give you some community organizing boost. And then finally, other interventions of your own choice. You've got some favorite thing you're already doing and could expand it to more people or a new place. Something else going on in your community piece-wise that you want to bring into your own setting. Those are all kind of the flexibilities that we are building in our program model. So this is like Ben and I's 45-minute long brainstorm of some ways that prior slide might activate in retreat centers. How about retreat centers as community centers? So I'm coming at this from I've gone to retreat centers. I'm not steeped in it as you all are as leaders, but as a user, I kind of more familiar with retreat centers as being kind of off the grid a little bit. Oh, they're behind the fence. They go drive by them on the state highway. There's a sign, but really was there a reason for why I would turn right into the driveway? Are they even open? How welcome am I to just say hello? I'm interested in you. I'm not saying you all don't do those things. I'm just saying as an end user, that might be some perception. Some people have a retreat centers that are kind of inward. This is an opportunity to use an AmeriCorps member to develop your center as a community center. Like, oh, we can be a place that people who don't want to spend a weekend and don't want to sleep over and don't want a long experience could still come to our place because we're the location where dialogues are happening, or we're offering these trainings in peaceful skills. Also, retreat centers could be service project sites for national days of service or other moments where a community wants to do something together and we got to find some trail to clear. Oh, our retreat center is on this many acres and could really use some volunteers to come in and help on that. And then other ideas you all are going to have. That's what we're going to talk about in Q&A. But then a second way you might think of this as retreatants as beneficiaries of the AmeriCorps service. How about imagining some of you might offer an AmeriCorps member to your retreatants to have some of their time while they're spending with you to sit down with someone for an hour and come up with your plan to convert your inner peace into outer peace. Maybe you'd want to offer some of these skill trainings to some voluntary, right? It's like, who wants to come to this session at 3 o'clock on, Saturday afternoon? Also, possibly some ways, I think a really cool thing that could happen is a way using AmeriCorps member to build some bridges between retreatants and the community locations in which your retreat sit. Again, sometimes people come to retreat centers aren't from you, they're from somewhere else. And so this is an opportunity. Get to know the people in the town we occupy, who are probably going to have some differences than where the people come from. And then lastly, again, other ideas of your own. So those are some specific applications of that general program model that, again, this was just Ben and I brainstorming, and it's not meant to be exhaustive, or maybe it's already too much. But I don't want you to think that we hadn't thought about how can an AmeriCorps member serve out of a retreat center. Here's the slide that covers that. So there are some things AmeriCorps members can't do. I won't go through every single one of these 12 bullets, but they basically are limitations around lobbying, around affecting business labor relations, and limit on religious proselytization. So AmeriCorps members absolutely 100% can serve in religious settings, but they can't deliver the religious activity of that setting. So yes, they can serve where someone's having a mass, but they can't be a lector at the mass. And they can't make you go to mass in order to get one of the services we're offering through AmeriCorps. So I think they're probably pretty familiar with, church-state separation, and this is how that's preserved in AmeriCorps. But for those of you who have a religious designation or religious intentionality behind your retreat practice, know that AmeriCorps members will be welcome there. We'll just want to be careful as we design the assignment for them that we've honored that requirement in the law. So those are the I put them all on slides so they're there in perpetuity, and so that when people say, "Do you never taught people about prohibited activities?" Oh yes, I did, from our very first orientation. So now I am moving to the end here, but in terms of how this operates, it's via shared responsibility between Peace or Action and the places that receive them, service sites, and possibly go-betweens like the retreat center collaboration. If they decide, you all decide you want to spot in this hierarchy also, but minimally it's a relationship between Peace Through Action centrally and service sites locally. And I just love when people tell me how to talk about things that aren't the one way I thought of it. Oh, you're basically like a staffing agency, like a temp, right? Yes, we're like the Kelly temps of Peace National Service. So if you think, oh, they get the people, we call and ask for them, they send them to us. That's it in its most basic in terms of the people management piece. Now, because we're a social purpose organization, and because AmeriCorps is a social purpose program, there are program components. So you can't just call and say, I want a groundskeeper. We'll tell them what to do once they get here. It's like our social purpose people are going to come with some equipment to do some certain things. But essentially, it's a staffing agency sort of makeup. And so under that staffing agency arrangement, things that Peace Through Action does is make sure members are being recruited to serve. So that's through advertising, that's through making sure listings are posted on the central place in the federal system where they go apply. We make sure all people considering AmeriCorps get a screening to understand what's involved. So you aren't answering how much is your living allowance and what happens if I leave early and all those little technical things. That's something we would take care of to make sure everyone's getting the same information and it's correct, and not, or you all aren't having to worry about all those little details. We also would do that same after they are enrolled and through onboarding. And then we're prepared to either provide supervision or coaching to the member. Kind of depends what's the staff capacity where they'll be located. And then all sorts of like the fun, really HR things, timekeeping, payroll. Everyone keeps asking me, are we have to cut their check? No, we cut the checks. Don't have to, if you aren't on a payroll system, automated system, don't worry, you don't have to buy one in order. No, they'll be on ours. Working with the member to collect their information about what they've accomplished and gathering that and getting it reported out both formally to AmeriCorps and informally to the public. And then, of course, we have some responsibility for saying, hey, we're sending you people that are going to know how to do good things. We have some responsibility to prepare them for that. So the activities that were in the red, the dialogues, the 3 dialogue methods, we'll prepare them in, and the 4 peace through action contributions, will prepare them. Other things that the community wants to do, your own interventions or others, that would be your responsibility to make sure the member gets some preparation to do that. But our intention is to equip them with enough that if you have no good idea of your own, but love this concept and we want this work to happen in our community, we don't have the bandwidth to come up with our own creative program plan, that's what we're sending a member with. And then the sites, that's you all, will be involved in recruitment. You know where, if maybe you're a community that still uses flyers on grocery store bulletin boards. How would I know that? You would. Okay, that makes sense. Plus, I'm not going to fly myself to hang up a poster in your grocery store. So localized recruitment. Interviewing and selecting people. This isn't like, oh, the staffing agency gets to tell you who to take. You have an opportunity to screen and interview the person and make that decision. Once they are selected and they're enrolled and they arrive, and I talk about this as if they're all coming from elsewhere. These may very well be people who live next door. The address next to yours or in the same town or the town over or in the city that you're operating from. So that when I talk about it, it sounds like, oh, they're all flying from, I live in Massachusetts and I want to serve in Montana. That can totally happen, and it's a beautiful part of service, and we want to encourage that. But many times AmeriCorps members serve in the community that is their community of origin at the time they're starting their service. But nonetheless, they need to be integrated into the community, whether they already live in it or whether they're coming into it. Giving them support on the intervention, even though we've trained them, they're still going to need some help on getting it off the ground. Like, yeah, we can tell someone, yeah, you're going to teach people dialogues and we're going to help them do it. Where they get taught that, you probably know who has free. Does the library have a free room? What room do I sign in the retreat center to do that? Okay, so that's what I mean by support. And then either coaching or supervision. And then two like natter some things, but they're super important. One, there will need to be someone local who can approve the members' time and attendance. Doesn't need to be 100% sight and sound, shadowing of somebody, but it does need to be someone local who can verify, yeah, they served when they said they did. So that's super important for compliance. And last thing, is they can't serve from their home. They could serve from a location that's not your own property, but it does need to be a location that's not their home. So they can't serve remotely. And if they can, they have to serve. And if they're serving in a physical location, they have to serve in a physical location that's not their home. There's all sorts of ways to achieve that. And I'm happy to work on that individually if that becomes a sticking point. Okay, the scary slide, money. So this costs money. AmeriCorps costs money. It's a people power program with a little bit of cash attached to them. It's not, as I told somebody, it's not an NIH grant. Oh my gosh, my institution just got $3 million to hire one principal investigator and some payment to the graduate assistants to do the legwork and a whole lot of indirect to the university to pay for overhead. That's not what AmeriCorps is. AmeriCorps is like, We're giving you the gift of a human being who wants to serve, who's gone through all this mechanism to get into service, and we attach some cash to them to make sure they get paid something, and that's it. So for a full-time member in 2024, the amount of money that attaches to a full-time member is up to $25,000. So that's not nearly enough to even pay for the cost of the member, to meet our legal requirements for the member, and it doesn't begin to address the other cost to operate a program. So typically how most AmeriCorps programs structure themselves, and we'll be doing the same, is by spreading the responsibility between Peace Through Action and service sites. And for service sites, we've calculated a need of $25,000 for a full-time member and $13,000 for a part-time. And please do not just hang up the call now. I want to talk about some ways we get there, but know that at some point some money has to come from places other than Peace Through Action drawing down the entirety. But so let me show you how that distributes, so that, right, people like to know, am I going to raise some money? Where's it going to go? So 25,000 this is for a full-time member. If we receive $25,000, that goes to their living allowance. The minimum living allowance is $18,700 for a full-time member, which is shockingly low. It's poverty-ish, and Peace Through Action just can't do it. So we're saying, no, there is allowance in the law and in the program to go higher, but the higher than 18,700 is our responsibility. So we're going to use part of that 25 to get them from the 18 to the 22-ish, and then the rest to get them to the maximum, which is 37,400, as part of that service site 25,000. That's what I mean by living allowance supplement. And then the other things are all required. They're not paid for with federal funds. FICA, a full-time member has to be offered health insurance. We have to do a criminal history check that's a little more complicated and more expensive than, checker. And then we're also required to make sure they're wearing things that say they're from AmeriCorps. Those are all like built in the program budget, must show that those are being paid for. So that's where your 25 contribution goes, is really to make sure the member can serve and be served for a year with something resembling something like a dignified income. It's not, I looked, the MIT, if you don't know, has a living wage calculator, so you might want to look and see what the living wage is in your county, but I did sample a few, and it actually puts not a generous wage, but it's at least what they calculate as a living wage in some parts of America, not San Francisco, not New York City, but it might. And really the intent, I mean, the service element of this, yes, the person serving is making some sacrifice, so it really isn't intended to be, an $80,000 career job. But at the same time, we need to make sure the members can make it through the year without hurting themselves. Hurting themselves financially. And then all the things in Peace Through AmeriCorps, Peace Through Actions, or all the other things that need to happen, training members, enrolling them, making sure we have enough money that when they say, we're coming in to do dialogues, okay, well, that requires some food to get them there. Oh, yeah, don't worry. If you got a way to get food, okay, but we're gonna make sure our budget has some way to pay for food in case that's not something locally available. Performance measurement, putting them on our IT system, issuing them a laptop, and then all the kind of core functions to make sure the program operates properly, accounting and things. So that's how the money distributes. Just feel it's really important for you all to know, we're not just collecting money to have around, and the contribution from service sites is really, it's like the bare minimum in order for us to properly meet the law and our obligations to the AmeriCorps member themselves. So fast flash to the planning grant that's happening now. We were announced in February 2023. It started in April. It ends in March. We got a whole bunch of our intention during this period is to build an AmeriCorps program that's excellent, compliant, enduring, and ready to compete for a program grant, which is why you're here. In part is to get into our program grant application if you'd like to be. And these are all the things that we're doing during this time to prepare us once we have an AmeriCorps program that we're ready to rock and roll and have a compliant program and ready to have members doing important things in communities. And then this timeline is what we're on now. We're in the July through December period of recruiting service sites to be part of our application. Our application is due early first week of January, and that's so nice of them to set a holiday-ish date for an application. So ours will be done before the last week of December. Then awards are announced somewhere between April and July. If we're awarded, we have a couple of months of notice to get before our formal start date, and so that would happen somewhere in July and September. So somewhere in summer to fall 2024 is when our AmeriCorps members would be serving in your retreat centers and elsewhere. So our invitation is as follows. Let's have some conversation, answer your questions. I can talk more about some of the I'm going to hear what you're most concerned about, and we'll focus on that. I have some, probably between Maggie and I, we have probably a response to everything, or we'll make one up in the fly. But let's do that. So that's one invitation. The other is Ben will be distributing this recording as well as the PowerPoint for your own learning. We have a web page, peaceraction.org/AmeriCorps sites has frequently asked questions. It will be the place that we have an application to fill out. And so I'm sure Ben will get that out to your community when that's going to be in the next week to 10 days when that's available. And I'm not going to make it a whole bunch of narrative. There'll be some narrative but it's more like collecting some factual information about the locations and things in order for us to satisfy some components of the application. But yeah, I'm hoping this is like a 75-minute or less application, not oh my God, I got to give a week to writing a whole bunch of narrative. That's not the intention. So our invitation, we would love to have retreat centers in this program, partly because of a shared belief that peace is possible, that people who seek it, they come into your communities, either for short terms or long terms, seeking that, and we have great potential to make them help them be lifelong peace builders with some extra support. Some of these activities I'm suggesting are things that you could extend to people who leave your retreat. Why couldn't you schedule an action planning with a retreating alum, as an example, after they depart? So it's a way to engage them over a longer term and bring them back in. The importance of the civic engagement component of national service. There are people in our country who want to serve it. And there are people who want to serve it and not in the military. And that's fine if they do. They want to serve in public service through a government position. This is a third pathway to serve our country. And it's our responsibility to create the spaces for them to do that. And so, and then the third piece I end on is this idea of so many AmeriCorps members enter service discovering that that's where their heart is on this, in social purpose or in the particular topic area they've been working on, the type of assignment they're on, and they pursue careers in it. And this is a way for us over a long term as a country to increase the number of peace builders here in the United States, and hopefully over the long term having them in employment positions so we can really stabilize peace building and not be reliant on a thoughts and prayers only approach. So last slide is our contact information. So that's all. Ben has all this. I'm going to stop now and let him moderate.
Woohoo! Thank you, Bob, for your passion and your ideas and all the work you've done so far. I'm gonna, yeah, I have so many things that I want to say, but I can feel that we all have a lot of energy around what's happening here. And I got a few questions through the chat. If you have more questions and you want to pop them in the chat, I'd love to see them. It'll help other people think too, if they can see your question come through. I also wanted to pop in the document where I've been taking notes and where I took notes from a previous couple of conversations. So you can see some of the thinking that's been going on behind the scenes for me. I also wanted to share a little bit about RCC's role in this. You heard a lot about, at a national scale, what AmeriCorps does, and at a local scale, what AmeriCorps does. And we've thought about that intersection with retreat centers and how retreat centers might be viewed as internal facing and could be viewed as external facing through the use of this program. But for RCC, as a community of retreat centers, there's a unique opportunity here for us to support you in your learning, support the members in their learning within a retreat environment. And so some of the values that we all share here at RCC could be sort of passed on to these AmeriCorps members as part of their service and help them learn from each other in a cohort of service members who are working in a similar context at other retreat centers. So there are unique ways that RCC can be a part of supporting your site and what you want to do, and where RCC can also be a partner to Peace Through Action in terms of finding funds, in terms of helping funders see the impact and the way that that aligns with the values across our network. So it's a much bigger picture that we could share with funders, which is exciting. So we don't know for sure where that's going, but there are a lot of ideas there. And some of this conversation is about uncovering what we have in common and might want to do together. So I encourage your questions. I want to share just with Bob a couple that I heard from one-on-one chats just to get the conversation going. So one question, this is from somebody who had to jump off early. They said, I'm wanting clarity about how I would engage a volunteer. And I said, it's not a volunteer, it's a member. But Bob said capacity building, which is what we would like for our retreat center. It's our center's 30-year anniversary coming up. We'll be reaching out to a lot of past retreatants and raising awareness and doing some fundraising. As a secondary focus, we're looking at our front office and trying to streamline some of our procedures. Would any of this qualify?
Probably that first part, if you like tie it to some sort of programmatic engagement of your alums. I wouldn't like just to get them to come to the balloon drop event. That's the capacity building within AmeriCorps State and National does need to tie to some programmatic, some outcome for the people in terms of a change in their knowledge, attitude, behavior, or condition. So if you can figure out how to do that, then yes. In terms of like using an AmeriCorps member for administrative and operations, that's not permitted in this program at all. There is another pathway into AmeriCorps that we're not involved in at this time. It's AmeriCorps Vista. And even in that is 100% on capacity building. Those members can't do direct service. But even in that case, they couldn't be used to do, administrative and secretarial type of things. But I love your idea of like I think there's a way totally for you to like capitalize on, we want to bring our past participants back into communication with us. And I think there's some ways you could turn that into a learning and action moment for them and not as part of your celebration. And they don't all need to be low. I mean, they could be virtual. You could do training. You could do action planning virtually. You could do the skills training virtually. They don't have to be in physical proximity, but there has to be an engagement with the AmeriCorps member. Like people are like, oh yeah, why are we all just doing this self-directed learning? Yeah, then we don't need AmeriCorps members. If we're just going to like pop up of a video and say, follow it on your own, that might require an AmeriCorps member to design it, but it doesn't require an AmeriCorps member to actually deliver it. So I think I covered that one.
Yep, good. Another question here, and then we can get into some that have just come to the chat now. Are volunteers going to be assigned in cohorts, like multiple volunteers in the same city with a community component, or would they be sent out individually?
Yeah, it could go either way. So we're open to both. So uh, that's kind of dependent on what your request is. If you want a fleet of them, then we apply for a fleet of them. If it's, well, we really only can handle one at our place, then we would also be looking at, are there other organizations from your same city, town, region that are also coming to us? And then, okay, we can bind those folks together, not necessarily structurally in the how to get them, but once we figured out, oh, there's enough of them doing same things in the same place, we could figure out how to marry that. And also you all might be able to be good ambassadors, like, oh, well, in addition to getting one at my retreat center, so and so in my community really could benefit from one. I'll let them know about this opportunity too. And if they ask for one and we ask for one, we have two and they can be companion, or I'll ask for two and farm one over to one. So we have all sorts of ways to get there. And I see Maggie wants to throw in a
Yeah.
cent on that.
I think the other opportunity is to look around the community writ large, because there are other organizations that may be accessing AmeriCorps folks, which was some experience I had when I did some of this work in Florida, which was to know that there were other sites, non-related, that had AmeriCorps folks that then you could also engage them in community.
Yeah, great point. So yeah, so there are AmeriCorps members serving for other purposes and other programs. There are nonetheless opportunities for the members to interact with each other. Typically, the State Service Commission, right, we'll be able to call them and say, hey, we're placing a member in, Minneapolis. Oh, well, here's all the other sites in Minneapolis that have AmeriCorps members. You all need to do your homework and get them talking to each other, which our AmeriCorps staff member assigned to that AmeriCorps member would help do those connecting the dots, unless you already knew those agencies. Oh, yeah, they're on I still call Rolodex. That's my generation, but my contact list. I do see a question in the chat around anti-racism work. So I totally think you could design an activity around that. It's not something that I see us like saying every site needs to do it, but I do think it's definitely within the wheelhouse. We could probably hook you up with some existing methods. Coming to the table together is one. The People's Institute for Survival and Beyond is another. So there are some methods already that might be, oh yeah, we can, plug and play, or it might be something that your other portions of your community are already dabbling in this space. But yeah, an AmeriCorps member could definitely, that's a great dialogue as one method to do some of that work. So totally eligible. I don't see it being required across all of our, some sites may want to really focus on violence against women. Others might want to focus on anti-Semitism. And so we want to be able to kind of recognize the diversity of the forms of social stress and be prepared to support communities on their priority, not tell everybody it's a X, Y, or Z. But I hope I answered that in a very encouraging way for Nicola to say, yes, I'm in. We'll make sure to shape it so that it works for you and for the AmeriCorps program.
I see a couple more questions here. I'm going to wait a second on Nancy's question, which I think is great, and jump to one that I received here in the chat that says, if I work part-time at a retreat center already, can I apply to be a part-time AmeriCorps member and be appointed to my same site?
You can, you have to do something different. So you can't be like, oh, I'm going to turn my part-time job to a full-time job by doing half on private funding and half on AmeriCorps. So yes, it would have to be very distinct work, but it is known to happen.
I wanted to also just flag what you were raising earlier about pairing up with another organization that's doing similar work and maybe already has an AmeriCorps member or experience with AmeriCorps members, and lift up this idea that I heard from another RCC stakeholder who has a lot of experience working with AmeriCorps, and said that if your retreat center has an existing partnership with another organization, this could be a great opportunity to have this person strengthen that partnership, maybe in your rural community, maybe in the nearby urban community that you don't have a great connection with. This person could actually really strengthen that by working in both settings, which is a little different twist than just saying, oh, our retreat center really needs someone, so that we'll bring them out here. It's more relational right off the jump, which makes that civic bridging a more core part of how they'd be serving. From there, we can jump back to this question in the chat from Nancy around, go back one more. Local housing. There's a lot of creative ways to approach housing with this too. And Bob, you and I had talked a little bit about retreat centers could be an interesting creative space where they could offer a different benefit to the AmeriCorps member because they have housing on site. So I don't know if you could speak a little to that.
Yeah, and it's also showing up in the question. I actually, I'm gonna put a pause on that. I could see why you could say, well, if we're providing them housing, that part of their living allowance that would go to housing, they're not going to need that income to pay for their housing because we're providing it. So I'm open to thinking about it, but I also want to honor that part of that 25 is some absolute have to make available costs regardless of whether you provide them housing or not. We have to make sure have an opportunity for health insurance. We have to pay their FICA. We have to do the criminal history check. We have to make sure they're in a tire. So those are like fixed regardless of where they live. And I also, from some equality issues across our program, I'm a little nervous about, hey, you get a discount because you can provide them a space, but if you can't, you're kind of punished a little bit in comparison to peers. So I just need to puzzle that through with my some folks are advising us around some of that, but I hear where you're going with it, and I'm not unsympathetic.
I would also say that it's an opportunity to lean into the opportunity of equity, in that you did that in addition, that enables somebody to really be part of the community of your center by actually being in residence, if you will, and gives them, it may open up the possibilities of more people being able to do that for the limited, allowance. I did that with people in residential schools in Florida, where they actually lived on site, and that was in addition to, so it was a much more equitable kind of arrangement from a financial standpoint that enabled others that may not be able to live off of that really minor stipend to do the work. So from an equity standpoint, it's a great thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, too, if you don't mind, I wasn't talking about a discount per se. I was simply saying if somebody wanted to stay with us, either for a project with which they're working with us, or if they're like we're near Buffalo and Niagara Falls, if there's members who are assigned there, this could be a source of housing.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, from that standpoint, absolutely offer those things. So none of that's restricted. The AmeriCorps really loves when sites can offer. Sometimes some agencies have relationships with their public transit agency, and like, okay, well, we'll get vouchers for the bus because the city has an arrangement to give bus discounts to low-income people, and so they say, oh, well, AmeriCorps members qualify, or even if they don't, there's some emotional a reason that would make sense to the city to do that. So those all those kind of extras. I just want to make sure you know that 25,000, a lot of that's for core costs that aren't like, because someone else has asked me, well, what if they don't need health insurance? I'm like, we're managing a 50-member core. I really can't go through person by person and do a separate bill for everybody based on what they need and don't. We're going to kind of need to stay in a lane. But I see a really beautiful question about Spirituality Center and local Native American community. Absolutely. Remember when I was saying and all that big long-winded about what you couldn't do, what we had to do, that bucket that said ideas of your own? We want to really encourage that. And you might find, I'm just going to make this up. Maybe there's a way to like actually do dialogue, but use indigenous methods of it and not what were probably indigenous methods that we've now like packaged as westernized methods and put outcome measures and stuff, but it's just been going on since we've been human beings. And so that maybe it's like, hey, I can get dialogue done and I can do it with the Native American community and we can use their traditional ways that they talk through stuff. But that would be an example, or it might be, I don't even want to do dialogues that anything related, that it'd still be like, okay, come up with something else. And that's what we want to be helpful at. Pretty much at this point, you're not really going to be stuck with your detailed position design or how the members going to be used. So you have time to like, let's say that was like, oh, we want to go a whole different direction and there's nothing off the shelf and we want to make it our own. You'll have time between now and July of next year, assuming we're awarded, to figure that out. And we'll be available during that period of between application and decision to help on that. Yes. Oh, great. A practical question about the 25. Yeah. No. So yeah, we collected and then we use that, it goes into our reserve for AmeriCorps, and then we use it to pay the expenses like health insurance. They'll be on a health insurance we select for everybody. You don't need to put them on your own. You probably bill quarterly. Monthly's a lot of paper, but definitely not all at once. There's a couple of things. First of all, you don't need to pay us until we have an award. Second of all, between the time you decide to come in and decide and we get an award, if something has happened in your organization fiscally or otherwise where you say, we're out, I'd hate for that to happen. We then have a member we have to find another home for, but you're not signing anything contractually with us until it's time to like decide, yes, we're absolutely taking a member, which would not make sense to sign contracts before we have members. And then the third, and so definitely pay in installments. They wouldn't be asked for the 25,000 on day one. And some ways we get there between now and then. We'll be providing some tools to help, some online campaign pages, options, some sample proposal language you could submit to community foundations. As Ben was saying, us two nationals are going to think through together whether there's some way to draw in some funds to help be a resource for some groups that want to participate and are just, that's the one barrier. Not saying I can't put any guarantees on that, but we're intentional about wanting you to be in. It's the 25 isn't meant to screen out. It's a reality of what it costs to run, any program that involves paying people. Let's see. So I hope we'll answer that one enough. You don't pay the member directly. They'll be on a payroll system that we cut them their direct deposit. Isn't that lovely? See, you don't have to worry about convincing if you're a one-person HR department. Because you're everything, don't worry about this one on some of those mechanical pieces of people management. Let's see, if someone meets the let's see, let me skim down. Okay. Yes, yes, Marlene. So I or our programs director could help imagine your particular suite of activities you'd want to offer, and how much detail needs to be in place before December 2023 is very little. You need to, yes, we'll do dialogue somehow, check, and one or two sentences. This is something else we imagine our AmeriCorps member doing. We have the luxury of a very tight narrative. It's a very brief amount of narrative we can contribute. So to get like big, long-winded, one pagers from each of you, I can't even use it other than to pull sentences from. So right now I'm asking for sentences. When it comes down to turning that sentence into something real, it would formalize in the form of an assignment description, which is what would codify what the member would be doing. I'm so happy with these very thoughtful, like second level questions. They're not about, oh, what's AmeriCorps again? So appreciate you're getting through the 101, and I'm really digging deep on some of these, how this really tangentially, operates. Is there anything else in the from your Q&A deck?
No, I don't have more from my deck. You gave the timeline. Which
Yeah, more to their training. Yeah, okay. So on those interventions, we'll provide training based on the need. So a couple things. We'll do some onboarding of like basic AmeriCorps responsibilities. That's more like onboarding than training, but it's in that vein. That probably is a week's worth of, virtual sessions online, most of their days for as much time as needed. Then the training on the interventions that we're committed to making sure they can do, that's going to kind of vary. Like Essential Partners has a base training that's 2 days. If we want to like send our members through the entire Courage and Renewal practicum, that's a 3-month program, but not daily for 3 months. But so that's an example of being a different length to get them more schooled more deeply. So that's kind of how long it's going to kind of vary by intervention, and it's not going to be all at once. So it's not be like, oh, for the first 2 months we don't even get to use the member. So that's the one piece on it. How do you mentor? Our staffing plan is we're going to assign a ratio right now in our budget of 1 AmeriCorps program specialist to 10 members. So that basically gives every member a half a day a week for coaching. And then of course we hope or want locally that somebody in your center will kind of embrace this person as someone to care for their activity well-being as well as their personal well-being. That you won't be like, oh, hey, we got you here, you're in a cellar in the basement and come out when your term ends. So there's definitely, you wouldn't do that to anyone else in your organization, so that we have that same sort of expectation. I think, let's see, can you speak more? How members are you planning? Yeah, so our I'm gonna call it our stretch goal, our desired goal for this first application is 50. And not just at retreat centers, we want you part of this, but it won't be just retreat centers. We're having conversations with Jewish community centers. We're having conversations with nonviolent city coordinators. We're having conversations with community mediation centers. We're having conversations with folk schools. So the overall picture of I'm planning on really digging deep on LGBTQ centers, and the intention of our program, our spirit is peace needs to happen everywhere. It's not violence, and social distress is not unique to one group only. And since it's a ubiquitous, and whether that's from incivility up to violent crime, we all have some, it's affecting all of us and all of our identity groups and all of our geographic areas. And so we want to have a site mix that shows that, and then a member mix that comes from that shows that. But I do think it's going to be also a very rich moment for the AmeriCorps members themselves to be able to compare and contrast activities they're doing with activities at a mediation center. Oh, you're doing it that way, we're doing it this way. How come a mediation center wanted this kind of dialogue and a spiritual center doing work with Native Americans wanted this way? So, and similarly, there'll be opportunities for sites to do some sharing, although I'm trying to really minimize you all's This is all about maximizing the people and the servant leader and minimizing the burden on you all, so that you can make the best use of this person's joy and energy and not feel like it's one more person that I have to manage. But that being said, yeah, of course, there's some management that comes with any human being.
Yeah, I think the lovely thing would be and I think Ben and Bob have had this conversation, if there were a group of you all that did this, and then that creates their own little network within your group. And I also would say the opportunity that Nancy now has me thinking about, which is if you all were looking into your community partners and asking them about housing the AmeriCorps person, not housing, but being the host organization, right? So the programmatic work would take place there, but you would be a partner in having them housed at your centers, I think is a really beautiful idea of how to elevate both the relationship and the expanse of relationship over community, and give housing to somebody who's going to potentially really need it and be struggling based on the limited resources of their
Yeah,
state.
but yeah, just to build on that, Nance, I think probably what I would say is gather your group, submit as a single applicant, reflective based on the information being asked in the form that you haven't seen yet, that it's intended to be a number of us, whether it's a number of you're going to share one member, or whether I'm coming in but I'm asking for 5 or 10 or 2 or whatever for my community. I wouldn't say you don't need to. I want to really, our application is more about meeting some of us nationally, being able to speak to the priority and all of that stuff. But in terms of like site, we need to know where they're going and the minimum of what they're going to do. We don't need, we're not turning in assignment descriptions for approval and turning in contract language and memorandums of agreement and all of that. So this is a pretty, your decisions at this point are more your institutional decision about, do we want this, and can we operationalize it financially and otherwise. In terms of like the beautiful part of program design around program design is almost secondary. That'll be the fun part that happens in the winter while we're waiting. But okay, I love all these questions, and you're keeping me on my toes. So I've had orientation calls for the general communities, and I'm just kind of building my suite each time with more good questions with hopefully cogent answers.
Bob, what do you think is the next step here for retreat centers who are like, man, this feels amazing. I want to be involved.
Yeah, so if someone's like super curious and like, oh my gosh, I gotta like talk to Bob like tomorrow because I'm ready to like design my whole program, get them our AmeriCorps at peacedirection.org is an easy one to remember. You can write me individually, I'll hop on that way. The other thing is give me about two somewhere at the end of next week will be an application that's an online form, and so once that's ready, Ben can send that out to your collective, and that will be a formal moment for you to fill that out. And also we'll be having more of these orientation calls, somewhat like this one, but by the time we have an application, there'll be a moment in that where we go through the application, so you can kind of hop on some calls in October and November, and you can go on mute and do other things until we talk about the application, or you can have a refresh. So
I'll just lift up too that the annual retreat for the RCC community is coming up next month, and we do have some time that's sort of for emergent topics. So this may be a topic that we discuss there. So there may be some more ideas that come out of that. Nancy, I love what you shared. I know you're going to be there, where people have these kind of creative approaches that are really custom to retreat center contexts. So happy to kind of circulate what comes out of any conversation that may happen there as well.
yeah, and Ben and I are having a blast. So I know I love that when when he caught wind of this and brought it to your stewardship council and they were equally excited. It was this idea, as retreat center collaboration can be can create a community of practice for your slice of the Peace Through AmeriCorps, Peace Through Action AmeriCorps initiative. And you'll have a lot of opportunity to support each other and learn together, and also as being among the first of the class, so to speak, to be able to be a model for others in the future. So, I mean, America, as long as we have a commitment from the national government to keep this program in place, we hope that we'll be in it forever. And then we hope that more retreat centers will, that seemed to be really working well in Niagara. Why don't we do this in Buffalo? And I think Niagara is sort of near Buffalo, sorry, but you know my point. We can, you all can be the first of many, and I know the retreat center collaboration is wanting to be that steward for you all, and I find that beautiful, and I will certainly help us programmatically to know that there's a helper in some of these program design considerations that really is intimately familiar with the retreat center models and practices that exceed what I know just as an occasional end user.
Yeah, but in our first conversation, the concerns you lifted up, I was like, wow, have you been on our calls? Like, what we talk about. You care about the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah, there's always a chain at that one. I don't know if I could actually ever go to that retreat center. How do you get on the property kind of stuff? Those were how many times have ordinary Americans just driven by a retreat center, they see the sign and they don't feel like they can go in because they think, oh, it's where all the solitary life happens and we're not supposed to interrupt and all of that. And I'm like, it's probably not really how it is for many of you, but this is a way to debunk some of that by having someone who's got some time to like go out into the community and say, this is what we're about. And you're welcome to come here and stay over if we're a stayover place, but we also have day retreats. You can bring a group, you can bring your family, you can just come yourself, you can stay for a year. All of your mechanisms are so different, but I think it's a way to as Ben described it, a community liaison type function that allows community members who might live in the same town you're in and just don't know a thing about you, and to be able to get to know you not because of a marketing flyer or because they see the sign, but because, oh, somebody from here gave me something I can use.
Excited to be a part of that.
Yes. All right, well, those are your next steps. Enjoy, coast on the good energy from today. So excited about this with you all. I'm counting on some retreat centers being in our application, and I think AmeriCorps the agency would fall out of their chair in shock to see something called a retreat center in an AmeriCorps application, because I'm going to bet many times you're not represented in other programs applications. So this is a moment to kind of wake them up to that there's all sorts of nonprofit organizations that see national service as an important component of how our missions get accomplished.
Thank you all.
I waved my Ameri flag. I'm going to go now.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you so much.